And we are back on My Mayor, and joining me is candidate Ken Welch. Hello, Ken.
Joe, good to see you again. It's been almost 12 hours.
I know. How's life on the campaign trail since I saw you 10 hours ago?
Life is certainly interesting, but we're having a good time as folks are now actually getting their ballots in the mail and voting, and we're still going out for forums and talking with the community. We have to be fluid now we're seeing the resurgence of COVID and the Delta variant, so we're adjusting, trying to stay safe, but we're still going out and talking to folks at this point.
That's great. So today we're looking at your content diet, and we're hearing where you get your information from, your news, your non-news, and your fun recreational guilty pleasure stuff.
Yeah.
So let's dig in with news, excluding the catalyst. Where are you getting your news from?
I'm going to have to start paying you guys like a therapy fee, because this is really, I'm going through introspectively seeing how I'm spending my time. And this all goes back to mom. I had the big red World Book encyclopedias, the full set. And so I would read them front to back. And so for me, the news and the non-news learning is all kind of one thing. So I kind of went through and looked at, how do I start my day? And I start with, most of us have Alexas. So I start with a flash briefing every morning. I figured I'd just go down and tell you what's on my flash briefing. So it starts with a Bible verse, then it goes to our local news, ABC Action News, NPR, Daily, the Daily from the New York Times, BBC World Service, Bloomberg First News, CNET News, and then the Daily Show, which is quasi news. And then I always have Morning Joe on my DVR, and then daily, all the local newscasts are on my DVR, NBC Evening News, and then weekly 60 Minutes, the news with John Oliver is kind of, again, quasi news, but he does some really in-depth analysis of issues like the PACE program, for example. And then there are event-driven content, C-SPAN, local government, news channels like City of St. Pete, Pinellas County. I watch those routinely. And then online, of course, the Catalyst, but also Florida Politics. Twitter's, an essential tool. That's where I get a lot of the news feeds from on items, instead of actually, just going to a particular feed. I see what's happening on Twitter and then go there. And then Facebook. And I recently joined Clubhouse, and I'm finding that to be really interesting content. And then on the fun, guilty pleasure side, obviously any football, I'm bad enough that I'm watching replays of, Super Bowls and football games, because we're waiting for football to start again. Certainly the Rays and the Lightning whenever they're on. And then on YouTube, that's where I go to my hobbies. There are a number of Harley YouTube channels where, enthusiasts talk about gear for bikes and safe riding techniques, those kinds of things. Music, of course. You probably see my Fender Strat in the background. So a lot of guitar techniques and players. Love HGTV, Love It or List It, and then Fixer Upper, two of my favorites. And then anything to do with sci-fi or the military, Matrix, Star Trek, Walking Dead, Band of Brothers, all of that is must-see TV for me. So there you go in a nutshell. That's all my content, and let's chat.
So great. Listen to those book encyclopedias. I hear they do those on CD now too, so you don't have to have the whole book. They've upgraded those.
There's something about having the paper in your hands with this big, massive red book. But that's where I learned about reptiles, dinosaurs, snakes, all that good stuff.
So a lot of the news sources that you mentioned are, traditional news sources, the professional organizations, kind of scattered in there now. There are a lot of really niche and specific news organizations. And sort of with that, has been unique perspectives, specific perspectives, and some of that, we'll call that non-objective content, seems to have then kind of blown back on the bigger organizations to the point where there's very few sources that people would universally agree are totally objective. So, when you're understanding that there are so many perspectives to different issues, what's your strategy as far as how to triangulate your own perspective that you can really rely on.
And that's so true, Joe. So much has changed, but I think if you get to something like C-SPAN, I mean, I just love watching the content and making up your own mind based on facts and science. And there is bias in a lot of the mainstream organizations, whether it's right or left. And you just have to look at the science and get to a determination of the facts as you see it. It's kind of like the going back to the encyclopedia. You know, do the research yourself, come to your own conclusions of what makes sense. Even now, with some of the hearings that are going on about the insurrection at the Capitol, I think you have to take a look at that and make a determination for yourself. There is spin all around that issue, but you have to let your eyes and ears tell you what the truth is. You can see it in front of you and come to your own conclusion. Unfortunately, we're at that point where social media is catering to our biases and feeding us content based on what we already believe. And so we really have to be intentional about getting to the facts and the science and the history of what is actually happening and trying to chart a path. Um, on the one hand, having the freedom of the internet has expanded our knowledge, but it's also allowed for a lot of misinformation to go out. And that's one of the key things that we need to try to come to terms with as a society.
And with that sort of science-based approach, that is not something that everybody does, obviously. And so we can see that in some of the really boisterous content that's out there that would contradict
Mhm.
science. And a lot of times, perhaps that's because people's information, like you said, is tied to their identity, is tied to the marketing, or the specific echo chamber that they've found themselves in. So, what are some strategies to counteract that? As if elected mayor, how do you lead folks to be more discerning about how they, receive and interpret information?
I think just having honest one-on-one conversations is the best way to do that. I've done that as a commissioner. Go out to where people are, have the conversation. I've had community conversations at libraries, at parks, at fire stations, at community centers. Just going to where people are, sitting down in a place where they're comfortable, and just having a conversation. What are your challenges? What are you facing in your neighborhood? What do you want to see changed? And it helps cut through a lot of the rhetoric, and you'll find that there's a whole lot more common ground than you would think. I found that out as we've talked about before, being an Uber and Lyft driver and providing 1,000 rides in our community. You meet folks from every stripe, and in that small space, those are real honest conversations about what's happening. And it's amazing the amount of synergy there is on what folks are concerned about. It's growth, it's infrastructure, it's neighborhood safety. It's, are we losing our character? And that was across the line, regardless of folks' backgrounds. And they want to protect our environment as well. And so I think if you have that honest conversation and connect on a human level, then you cut out a lot of that rhetoric.
All right, and it's you, it's a Harley, it's an unlimited budget, and a YouTube channel. What's the theme? What's the show about?
Oh, that's actually coming. It's Project Connect. This is the book I'm writing, Project Connect: 1,000 Rides to Common Ground. So that's what I'm working on, based on the Uber and Lyft experience. And one of the chapters is you're not that important, and that's about politicians. And, out of 1,000 rides, only 3 people recognize me. One was a young man from a high school that I'd mentored at. One was a lobbyist, and the other was the assistant MPO director, Sarah Ward. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. But the other, 997 people plus aren't tied into politics in their daily lives. They're trying to live their life, put food on the table, take care of their kids or their parents. And I think that's the realization that we have to keep this in balance and be able to really connect to people. So that's what the Harley and the Uber story will be. It's about our real connections and how we move forward as a community.
That's great. Candidate Ken Welch,
Yeah.
thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you in the near future.
I'll see you in 12 hours. Thanks, Joe.